there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Bitcoin is punk rock. Deal with it.
You split, we bankrupt you.
Do you use Lightning wallets to pay for things or not?
No.
Bitcoin Cash would be seen as more of a threat to the United States hegemony than Bitcoin.
Miles, Tom, what's your favorite kind of money?
Bitcoin Cash.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, this is episode number 58, Flipstarter and BCH open source engineering, featuring Sahid Miller. Today is Saturday, the 27th of August, 2022. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing, and our guest today is another dev. It's good. These recent episodes, we'll be getting a few more devs in the mix, and I like that because I promised all the listeners we would have a bit more of that, and I think it's time we have a bit more technical, in-depth chat anyway. So Bitcoin Cash developer, big fan of Flipstarter, obviously, so we're going to be talking through that in depth, and regular contributor to the Bitcoin Cash Telegram chat as well. A lot of the Bitcoin Telegram groups too. Welcome to the show, Sahid. How did you get into Bitcoin?
Hey, nice to be here, guys. How'd I get into Bitcoin? Actually, I think I got into it right around, or at least Bitcoin Cash, I got into around 2018, 2019. I was working for the Foundation of Economic Education, and I heard about Roger, how much money he blessed them with, and it was like millions of dollars. I think it was the biggest donation ever in Bitcoin. And so that's where I learned about Bitcoin Cash after following him on, social media and whatnot. And after that job, I wanted to go ahead and work in Bitcoin Cash and IPFS, basically, doing decentralized open source programming. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, for the most part.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit, actually, because I personally am not very familiar at all with the whole IPFS thing. I understand what it is at a very rough level. So it's the Interplanetary file system. So as far as I can tell, it's this kind of sort of decentralized web hosting, sort of like BitTorrent, but combined with Amazon AWS web.
Did he cut out there?
Yeah, we have lost Jeremy, for those in the chat.
Oh, I'm back. I'm here.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I'm here.
I'm so happy that wasn't me.
Rugged again, mate. Rugged again. It's just on the show. It was all a troll.
Real quick, just to cut you guys off for a second. I apologize to the audio listeners. That Twitch notification sound still just came through. I'm going to see what I can do about it right now.
Okay. All right. Anyway, IPFS, right? So it's decentralized AWS servers. It kind of seems to me. I had a look at the homepage and I tried reading some of the docs, and I kind of got a bit of an idea, but it was still a bit over my head. It seems a big project. So give us how does that work? What's going on there?
IPFS is exactly what you're saying. It's basically BitTorrent, but a little bit more accessible. So you can have so everybody kind of like contribute. Actually, it's the only difference between BitTorrent and IPFS is that instead of like having a network just for each file where you connect with everybody who has that same torrent, with IPFS, everybody's kind of like participating in letting everybody else know where to find that content. So if I have a file here and I give you a hash of that file, then you'd on your side of the world, you'd go ahead and type that into IPFS, or you go into a browser, IPFS.io, and plug it in, and it'll contact basically the closest nodes and locate the file, and then get it to your machine. And using that hash, you can actually verify that it's the actual file, similar to BitTorrent. All the inner workings of IPFS is really similar to BitTorrent for the most part.
Okay, all right. So, and where does all the file storage come from? Because obviously in AWS or in Google or whatever, they just buy up stacks and stacks of racks of servers. They put all the content on there, they serve it up. Maybe they have some CDN providers. Okay, for people who don't know, content delivery network. So when you're requesting a website, firstly there's a central servers where they've got all the stuff set up, but then they usually have external providers to reduce latency, right? So that you load up Google, it doesn't take 2 seconds for the light to travel all the way to wherever in the world. If you're on the other side of the world, the servers, they have local versions all dotted about, but that's all sort of centrally managed by the website provider and or the cloud distribution networks. But in IPFS, it seems like who stores all these gigabytes of files or petabytes or whatever, and why do they bother?
So that's a good question. So how it works is that you only store, so everybody can participate in the network. So you can run your own node on your computer. IPFS IO or the Protocol Labs, which is the company behind IPFS, they have a bunch of huge servers running for the public good or whatnot. And that's actually why I like BCH working with IPFS, because it gives an incentive to kind of like, store files and whatnot. So IPFS actually did a IPO or ICO a long time ago, or 2017-ish. I think it was the largest at its ever, maybe, ICO. And so there's a lot of money into going ahead and making storage work and make it work fast. And it needs a coin to give the incentive to store the files. And so they've been working hard on trying to create proof of storage to kind of like figure out what, at least in the Filecoin side. But I'm not into all that. Like my chain's kind of like simple and whatnot, and that's why I like to go ahead and merge BCH and IPFS. So the incentive to go ahead and store things, everybody stores whatever files they want to go ahead and store, but what everybody participates in is basically letting each other know where that file is. So if I start hosting a file, then I'll broadcast to the network, and it'll store like an identifier or a pointer saying that my computer over here, or at least my computer with this, ID, is storing this hash. And so somebody out in Japan or something could be storing that little bit of information saying my computer, my IP address has this file and with this hash, because there's this computer over here is storing this hash, and or a bunch of these computers are storing, like a whole list of computers that are storing this hash. And that's basically how BitTorrent works under the hood, but it just does it for one particular file or one particular torrent. With IPFS, everybody's participating in that as a whole for every file that's put up on there.
So it is sort of a decentralized emergent consensus in terms of you could be the only one on the network hosting your one file, or there could be 1,000 people. It just cares how many people care enough to preserve that file, right?
Exactly. And the more people who store the file, the faster it'll work, obviously, because then you don't have to go ahead and make a hop all around the world. And more people will keep those pointers as well, since everybody who has the file will also be able to tell, hey, I have that hash right now. And so they'd be able to answer quicker and whatnot. And so for the most part, though, since it doesn't run off of a coin, it's either individuals going ahead and storing the files, or it's IPFS Protocol Labs that has their public servers, which are running them. And then there's a bunch of other gateways and services that are built on top of IPFS as well. So they also provide that service, but usually they charge a fee at a certain rate of how many files or gigabytes you're storing.
Wow, yeah, it's so cool, and I love that idea of the sort of emergent consensus around the files, because reality already works that way by default, right? Which is that if you want to read the Bible or any other text or anything, a piece of Mozart music or anything that has existed in humanity's collective consciousness for hundreds of years plus, the only reason that happened is because throughout that time there has been an unbroken chain of at least one person basically who bothered to keep it around. I mean, I know there are people who go on archaeological digs and they find the ruins of Pompeii and whatever, right? So there's some sort of freak accidents like that. But even if we find something in that scenario, if nobody cares, it just gets wrecked, it gets junked, or somebody loses it, or the museum eventually retires it out of the display case and nobody cares anymore, right? And so it seems to me a natural evolution that's just the digital version of that, this kind of online community archiving type of thing.
That's exactly right. And one of the biggest problems with when you're just storing, or if one person is storing it, or say that it's a public good that's storing it rather than somebody who has an incentive, is that it's really slow. So if you use IPFS just on its own, that's like the biggest complaint about IPFS when people start using it, is that it can be very slow if you're just shooting up files up onto the web and not storing them yourself, or having a bunch of servers to go ahead and store it and also feed into the IPFS network. And the only way around that is to have some kind of incentive. That's why Flipstarter.me, I run my own node. It's public, but it's only just for Flipstarter data and whatnot. I screen out everything else to make sure that I'm not storing anything except Flipstarter information. And so that makes it, super fast. And then anybody else can also go ahead and participate in that network. And so you can kind of like scale horizontally pretty quickly using that kind of technology.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting, and I think we're going to see more things in the future are going to be like this. That the idea of decentralization making a bit of a comeback. Obviously, throughout history, it has fluctuated a bit between things go through a period of centralization because it's more efficient. So the decentralized stuff basically gets outcompeted by more centralized services or products or ideas or whatever. And then at a certain point, things have become quite centralized in a lot of aspects. And then decentralization starts making a comeback because it's more resilient. You're trading off efficiency. So like in this case, the speed of the file download. By adding redundancy, you make it more resilient but less efficient. And so it's likely to be longer lasting, but it has to survive the competition against a centralized competitor. So it kind of goes in that pendulum, and Bitcoin, the invention of Bitcoin is just sort of a bit of a turning point. A lot of people have since identified, okay, maybe as part of the trend or as a trigger for the trend, everybody has realized, wait, we're getting in a bit of a scary world now where we globalize data and communications and so on and so forth. And the early internet, which was a bit more decentralized, has kind of centralized into a few big providers and players, and now it's needing to shift back the other way. So IPFS is another huge, not advocate, but a huge example, I guess, of that, along with cryptocurrency. So yeah, I love to see it. I think it's super cool, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And you bring up about like the global network. What's cool about IPFS is not only does it work globally, but also works locally. And so if you have this would be the replacement for the internet if you had like no connection, because I can have everything on my network pulling or talking to each other to go ahead and get information. So if the internet was like completely all IPFS size or hashed, then you can actually have networks pop up, local networks able to go ahead and communicate with each other, and everything would run smoothly, even if the internet got shut off in between. As long as people had those files existing around you can still grab them and verify, and be 100% sure that your data's so it actually gives you a little bit of data sovereignty overall too.
That's actually amazing, because one thing I've always thought about, it's one of the biggest FUDs ever, one of the most long-lasting FUDs really against crypto, is you always have these sort of gold advocates or whatever they've got the idea about Bitcoin. Yeah. They're not saying, okay, it's used by drug dealers or all that sort of stuff. Once you get past all that FUD, it sort of gets to this point of, yeah, but what if the sun has a solar flare and the whole internet shuts off? It's like, what are you talking about? If the whole internet shuts off, sustained globally everywhere for a significant period of time, mate, you're going to have a lot bigger problems to worry about than whether or not your gold bar is better than your Bitcoin. At that point, you're going to need a shotgun and some canned food, right? So it's the most ridiculous argument, but I think it's interesting.
It pops up a lot. It pops up so often, actually. It's surprising.
Well, I mean, what's
cool about it is that even if let's say, I don't know about the sun having a solar flare and wiping out all electronics, but when you combine IPFS and something like BCH, a simple chain that can go ahead and scale and whatnot, I think it provides an incentive to build those networks. So say that something did happen, there's an incentive here to go ahead and connect with each other to kind of get that data spreading around so we can share blocks. IPFS and the UTX blockchain, it seems like a perfect match to me, because the blocks are already hashed, the transactions are already hashed, So they can exist on the IPFS network easily. And so we wanted to go ahead and propagate that as much as possible. It doesn't matter if it's radio, because these packets are small, or generally small compared to a lot of other files and whatnot. And so if you have a system like IPFS that can work over whatever protocol, it doesn't have to be HTTP, it doesn't have to be TCP, it can be Bluetooth, it can be radio, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're able to get that data and then verify it on the other side using the hash. Then this gives the incentive to kind of share that as much as possible and as quickly as possible around the world, so we can get economic stuff moving around. And the internet is important for so much of our economic activity and daily lives that I feel like it just makes a lot of sense. Even for the people who are worried about a solar flare coming around and wiping out modern civilization.
You're blowing my mind here because, I've just realized you're right. The blocks are hashed and the transactions are hashed. So you can host each individual transaction on IPFS as a separate little chunk of data. And so therefore you have but like you said, it all just works. It all just fits together. By default, you've already created a kind of decentralized, because people, when they're talking about scaling, there's a lot of really good suggestions which are going to eventually sort of come to pass or whatever, which is ideas like, okay, you can commit the set of UTXOs and then somebody can, instead of having to start at block 1 and go all the way to block 700,000, instead they can kind of do it in reverse, where you can start with the most recent transactions or the active transactions, which is the one that people care about, are going to be making future transactions built upon, and then you can kind of backfill the other ones in the past. So it's still trustless, because if the hashes don't link up, then at a certain point you're going to get back and you're going to be like, wait, this doesn't add up. But it means that you can bootstrap faster and in the same. So there's lots of there's Bloom filters and more efficient thing. I think there's already some of that in Bitcoin, but there's a lot that remains to be implemented in terms of making things more decentralized and efficient in terms of sharing around the data, letting people bootstrap nodes, that kind of thing. And the only barrier has really been resources, right? We've got 1,000 things we need to do, and people don't have the time and day to sit around and make all this stuff all the time. Only a couple of people are working on it at any one point. But if IPFS is already there and you can host the individual transactions, you can host the individual blocks, it's already possible. And maybe somebody just needs to wrap up a package that makes it easy. You can already just run like a hundredth of the blockchain or something like that, 1% or 0.001%. And we could get a scenario where we'll talk about this later with nodes. That would be so cool if everybody was like running a fraction of a node. Think about how many people don't run a node at the moment. You either run the whole thing or you run none. But what if you could just have a gigabyte of the blockchain? That would be so cool.
Yep, and being able to share those blocks around where people need it, because sometimes you need those blocks and transactions to go ahead and verify a payment. And so if people are going ahead and sharing those around, especially peer-to-peer, just with their phone and some mesh network or something like that, which will be coming around, especially with the Internet of Things and all that. It'd be nice to go ahead and get these blocks and transactions moving around, maybe incentivize it a little bit, like, give me like almost like a fee on top so you can get this block so you can do your business, which I think is super interesting. Yeah, but we will talk about it when it comes to the full nodes.
That mesh networks stuff, I was going to hit on that too, because that's where I think there's just so much potential. I mean, people already built into the idea a little bit of the phone hotspots, right? People understand that, okay, one person has the sort of link connection and then they can share it around to a local pool of people. And if we could expand the usage of that a bit more, it would sort of circumvents around and cuts out all of the centralized backbone providers and so often, and it increases
ISPs are a big issue these days, especially with privacy and censorship resistance and whatnot. And so IPFS is a big solution to that, and of course BCH and crypto is a good solution to the whole monetary issues going on. And so linking them up together, it's a match made in heaven for me personally. But a lot of people don't seem to realize that, I feel like.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a separate community, because like I said, I'm aware of it and I kind of know what's going on. And I had a bit of a look at it and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm glad these guys are cracking away on it. But I also didn't see any immediate point where I was like, get me involved. And you don't hear a ton of sort of cross chat, I think, between those two communities. But maybe that will grow over time, especially if they found a way to sort of more plug in the crypto elements. And if people do DeFi farming and stuff, they got super into that basically just because they could make money, right? So there was a reason for them to be interested. If they made it a bit slicker to get paid for hosting up files, then that could be a thing, right?
Yeah, the only other person I know in the BCH community is Chris Troutner, Permissionless Software Foundation.
Yeah,
I want to give him props and shout out because he puts out a lot when it comes to BCH and IPFS, and it's some good work. And he builds a lot on top of it as well. He basically moved his paid service, which a lot of freeloaders were using without paying, and he was rate limiting it and whatnot. But he went ahead and built out a separate IPFS enabled version, which is since it's hosted on IPFS, it can be basically anybody can go ahead and participate in hosting that data. He's able to go ahead and provide that for free, and plus it's permissionless, and so people can go ahead and join in that. And basically, he's able to replace this a paid or he was actually able to solve a problem with IPFS and BCH, which was really cool.
I've mentioned this before, I think just in passing. And I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I always thought it'd be cool to have like a mesh network for 3D printers, and then people could, pay or pay in whatever cryptocurrency to get a certain print done. That printer responds by sending them a token, and then to claim the final materialized print, they redeem the token with the tool library or whatever. And I wonder, like, just kind of building off that, just store the STL files on IPFS, and then you have like, imagine you have local networks and local communities that have a shared printer, but those locals, or I guess, I'm in love with this. This is fantastic. I think I know of a certain very niche group online that would love this kind of thing.
Maybe throw it in the chat, maybe? I don't know. I'm very curious about that. But I think there are actually 3D printer files, like the ones that have been censored. I think when it comes to firearms, printing out firearms or I think they have uploaded that to IPFS since it is getting censored on the traditional internet. I think somebody don't quote me on that, but it'd be really easy to add them there, and you can't really stop it after then. But I'm pretty sure they already are. When it comes to since you guys mentioned mesh networking a couple times, there is another layer to IPFS that's underneath that kind of like makes it all work. It's called libp2p. And I think it is based off of an Ethereum library, like some other kind of, it ends with P2P as well, but peer-to-peer. But it basically is a library. They got a few different implementations, JavaScript, Go, Rust, I think, a few different implementations in different languages. But basically, this is like the protocol where how they talk to each other. And it makes it so it's standard whether you're talking on over HTTP or TCP or WebSockets or UDP. Doesn't matter what the protocol is. It can literally be over radio or something like that. But as long as that protocol that is a duplex kind of connection, everything can kind of work together like that. And so when you guys mentioned the mesh networking, I don't think people realize how much power is inside of if we made use of libp2p for our communications between computers or devices, because it can really blow things up. Like when you're mentioning about the phone hotspots. My last project that I was working on, but for Flipstarter, I went down a freaking rabbit hole because I had something running on IPFS, a website. It was like almost like a little terminal app running in the browser using IPFS. And what it would do is that it would use the phone. It could use the phone hotspot to kind of like get a libp2p connection to the outside world, then route it back to your phone. And you can actually have a certificate on your phone so that you can actually go ahead and sign everything yourself. And you can serve yourself up IPFS sites. And it'll literally come up with like HTTPS. It'll be secure. So you don't get that annoying pop-up like, this is not secure. Because that's the big problem with trying to bootstrap a new internet onto the existing system, is that you have things like this HTTPS, which is good. It's great for security and whatnot. But the problem is that it's not really ready for the next generation since IPFS is already secure, everything's already encrypted and whatnot. It's not like not having HTTPS is going to break anything, but since it has that not secure symbol on there, it's pushing a lot of users away, or keeping a lot of people away from being able to adopt it. And adopt other P2P kind of like systems and whatnot. But there's ways around it, and using P2P is actually a pretty powerful way of doing it.
So,
and it's built, and IPFS is built on top of that, which makes it even that much better.
Does that circumvent the certificate authorities? Like, so I do a lot of .local certificates. So even if I go to it and like any Chromium or Chrome-based browser, it'll say like, this isn't secure, and it's not because it's not HTTPS, but because it's not a certificate from a certificate authority.
Yeah, you'd have to install it as a root certificate. The way that I was doing it was freaking wild. We started getting geeky. I mean, we haven't hit the first slide yet. We haven't hit the first slide yet, but it generated its own certificate. You can create a certificate in the browser using Crypto Forge, I think, or something like that. Forge, it's a library that you can actually go ahead and create certificates. It was an IPFS site, and I put it onto my Raspberry Pi as like the, when you join a new Wi-Fi hotspot,
like a gateway pop-up.
Exactly. So it was like a no dog splash kind of thing. So it was a splash page, and it would actually be an IPFS page, and you can go ahead and create your own certificate using that page, and then install it. It's your own. It was created in the client side. Right? Install it yourself. And then once you did that, you can connect to an outside node, and you can verify that it'll reroute everything back to you. Right? And so once it reroutes back to you, then it can terminate the SSL. So it gets HTTP. So it's HTTPS. It's happy with HTTPS at that point. So after that point, you can go ahead and connect to anything else unsecurely, but of course it's using libp2p to actually make those connections. So it's actually still secure, just not HTTPS secure. And so, and then the whole system kind of comes together after that. And so you can kind of get HTTPS without actually being HTTPS. It was wild. I had to stop that project because it wasn't making me any money, and it was very complex, but it worked, and it could be user friendly. And the way that I was thinking was getting this to work so that we can have mesh networks outside of like the traditional system. I mean, you can be in the middle of the woods. You can actually go ahead and talk to people as long as they join your hotspot and whatnot. And it was pretty wild stuff for real. IPFS, libp2p, and BCH, I feel like make a great combination.
Yeah, this is all sounding excellent. We might have to do another episode at some point where we dig into all the details, or what is the potential. I can just see in 10 years the stuff we're going to have out of this is going to be mind blowing compared to what we have today. So quick ones for the chat. I got to shout out Bitcoin Collab, who was saying might be hitting up the club with their mates and listening to the podcast in the background. So shout out to anybody who's at the club, like in the corner with the headphones in, just listening over the Katy Perry or what, I don't know, what are they playing these days? Ariana Grande, whatever. So shout out to them, and also shout out to Bitcoin Jason, who's in the chat. Guess it might be a good time in Australia, and the whole family.
What's up, Bitcoin Jason?
Getting in on the podcast action. So good stuff. Glad to have you all. Okay, got to crack on. First thing, shout out to the Bitcoin Cash Podcast listener survey that I mentioned on the last episode. I'm going to leave it open for this one more episode, so everyone will have a chance to check in and fill it out if they want. It's 10 questions, really simple. The results will be out next episode, and I think we're going to get some really interesting insights from it. So bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, SURVEY. Just click on that Google Forms link, take 2 minutes, and I'll see the results. I'll be talking about them on the next episode. So get involved in that if you want to do that. Okay, price. It is $117.37 US dollars for one BCH. One BTC buys 172.34 BCH, so we're up against BTC this week. And one Ethereum buys 12.7 BCH, so we're actually up against Ethereum as well. Bitcoin Cash having a pretty good week against the crypto markets, and a slight improvement on the fiat price, but only a couple bucks. How do you handle the financial aspects of crypto then? What do you do about volatility? Do you speculate much? Do you day trade? Do you have a variety of cryptos or just BCH? Tell me about crypto markets.
No, yeah, I don't really deal too much with price or trading much. So when I see these price indicators, I kind of get a sense of what's going on in the market, but it doesn't really personally affect me much. Unfortunately, I trade right back into fiat pretty quickly. I am trying to work towards a non-fiat kind of system and whatnot, but yeah, unfortunately, I can't I can't handle volatility like that personally.
No, that's fine. I mean, everybody has their own risk tolerance, their own scenario, their own point they're at in their life, their own financial commitments or whatever. And it's important that people are responsible about that. That's always been mentioned on this show very heavily. And I think people need to take that seriously. And even if you literally hold no BCH and you just buy some, make a transfer, and the other person sells it, that's still amazing. That's still great for the network because it generates transactions, it pays the miners, it's creating the network effect that you can receive some Bitcoin Cash some other way, and then you wouldn't need to sell it because you already have an outlet to send it around. All of that is really, really important. So I think everybody should just be using it to the extent they can. And it's interesting because on this show, I don't think we've had many people who, well, a lot of people say, yeah, I did some trading for a bit or this and that, but it's obviously a show not focused on trading and gambling pretty much. But at some point, I should have a guest on who is a big trader or a big speculator or whatever and get some of their insights. So this is the first time it's occurred to me on episode 58 that I've never thought, why don't we have a trader or a day trader on to get their take, because they can certainly live in a different world with all the numbers and everything. It's so stressful, man. When I was more into that, geez, you spend all day, all night sitting up, staring at the blinking screens. It's like a video game that can just drag you in forever. It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't really play that game too at all, actually. And I don't know how much representation there are for folks like me and whatnot. I think I'm on the like lower end of the economic scale, and so I think there's a whole lot of talk about holding and trading, and there's a whole lot of room and space in the crypto community for that kind of talk, but not much for people who don't have much, but also want to see a world where it's P2P cash everywhere, and not centralized, central banks running the entire economy and whatnot. And so there's like I like to have like that voice or those differing points of views to kind of like get a voice sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think as time goes on, the hope is, I suppose, that the economic resources will draw towards Bitcoin Cash. So if you're involved and you're in it for the right reasons, you're in it for the utility and the revolution, that will then sort of self-fuel itself, right? And that has happened not in Bitcoin Cash, but in crypto overall. Okay, it's been super volatile, but the longer you're in crypto and the more sort of diversified across all the different coins, I guess you are, the more on average you have basically made money out of it, right? You've got some financial benefits to a smaller extent from the actual utility of being connected in this new, more vibrant economy, and to a secondary extent from the price just going up as more people kind of pile in. So in that way, the earlier adopters of any specific coin or whatever, as long as it lasts, if it goes bust like Luna, well, you've just screwed yourself. But if your coin lasts over time, then on average, the people who are with it, they're also accumulating connections in the community, they're building projects, they're getting reputation and so on and so forth. And so all those things just sort of slowly pay back to people in this beautiful loop, which Satoshi set up deliberately so that the people who buy in to the concept, both in the terms of their money, but also their time, their resources, their expertise, then get rewarded to continue I mean, that's just how the economy works generally, right? But cryptocurrency is a very it's like that on steroids. It's very amplified in that way.
Yep, exactly. And what you just mentioned about building connections and actually getting that's the way that I kind of approach it. I want to take my development skills and try to actually accrue BCH with my, not not exactly working for a company out there for fiat and then trading it in for, which nothing wrong with that, you know. But I am trying to go ahead and put my skills so I can go ahead and generate BCH, directly.
Peer-to-peer.
Exactly. Where, and I wanted to say something else about that, but I totally forgot. So
it'll come back to you. It'll come back to you. All right, next slide. We got I think we got stat of the week. Yeah, I've got sick of reporting on the transaction numbers and the Sen in USD every week, especially if it's boring. One of the reasons I kept it around mostly as long as I did was because I think that it's so interesting to look back. If you look back at any of the older episodes, you can sort of see where things were at that time. But I thought, you know what, let's mix it up. So from now, I'm just going to change it, make it just stat of the week can be the new segment where it'll be a different thing every week, or we'll have transactions or send in USD if there's something interesting to talk about, but it'll be something I think is interesting to highlight in crypto. So this week we're starting off with a positive one and a self-centered one. So the podcast has just passed 50,000 YouTube views all time across all the videos, which I can't thank the viewers enough for. And we've recently also, so that 50,000 views has comprised more than 8,000 hours of people watching the show. And we've also just gone past more than 8,000 audio down. Yeah, shout out to Fahid in the chat who provided this screenshot to me and pointed this out. And it's just great to see podcast growing, the community growing, and that's why people shouldn't be really worried about the price when the views are starting to climb up there, right? People are interested in this stuff. If I'm not out here making content like this week shocked reaction face to the moon, a rocket emojis. I mean, you can get a lot of views like that, but it's not going to last. But that's not what we're doing here. So I think, a very good sign for the community in that regard. Do you have any crypto stats that you like? Is it transaction count or any other metrics that you really pay attention to in terms of community growth?
No, but I actually think the YouTube views is definitely more real kind of like metric of what's going on within the community or coming, our reach outside the community as well. And so I think those are definitely more real than exactly something more like a transaction volume or which it can be all over the place at different times. And whereas with YouTube views, that's something that steadily grows, kind of like exactly what the community does as a whole is steadily growing rather than going all over the place up and down. I feel like one is more direct comparison to what's actually going on than the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally,
we should be able to see because when something becomes in vogue as the world is today, if something sort of starts trending, then suddenly a lot of people get interested in that niche. And it's very interesting how flat the internet is in that sense, where it's kind of like the attention sort of circulating around across all the potential different topics. And if it all just can filter into one area, I don't need to do anything different to get 10 million more people listening to Bitcoin Cash. It's just if they're interested, it's already there, and then suddenly they can all be there, right? So I think we'll see it. We'll see at some point, or it'll be really interesting if we get to a bit more of a bull run. Definitely last time when there was that run up from $300 or whatever, $200 to $1,500. The show downloads started going up in comparison as well too, and then once it went down, the views also went down. So it really goes to show once the momentum is there, everybody gets interested, right?
Interesting. Yep.
Very, very interesting. All right, first actual topic of this week we've got is the merge. I've got the merge in 3 weeks. I guess it would still be 3 weeks. It's now getting closer to 2 weeks. It seems like it's been pushed back a little to Thursday, the 15th of September in the evening. It was more going to be Thursday, the 14th, 15th night, but it's now looking like the back of September 15th. Obviously, this is the big Ethereum make or break moment as they switch to proof of stake with years and years and years of development going in and changing the economics of their coin, the technical setup. Tons is going into it. Got a news article here. Ethereum bug bounties jumped to $1 million before software upgrades. So obviously they don't want to have any issues there. So I think if they got a critical vulnerability fixed for $1 million, that would be money well spent on their part, because there's a lot more than that on the
that's
line.
a drop in the bucket.
Exactly. But I guess somebody could have a pretty good payday if they found an issue, although they could also have a bigger payday by just sitting on it and then exploiting it when it went live. I guess that might be a little riskier. But I just, because this is the thing in crypto, and it's going to be one of the biggest events in crypto history so far, whether it goes well or not. So I'm interested to get your take. What do you think about the merge and about Ethereum overall?
I actually don't know too much about it. I don't pay too much attention to Ethereum. I'm actually pretty BCH focused. That's how I answered in your survey for the most part too. But I'm curious, how it goes, because I've been hearing a whole lot about proof of stake. It's been gaining steam since the whole since I think around the pandemic, when people were talking about the environmental friendliness of or unfriendliness of proof of work versus proof of stake. And so, but I've never been that confident in proof of stake as a decentralized kind of like a consensus mechanism. But I know some developers, I've worked with developers who really believe in proof of stake. So, but I haven't dived into, I dove in it like for a little bit, but I'm not convinced. But there's some real competent people who've worked on it that swear by it. So I'm waiting to see, what happens, whether it's really good news for Ethereum or, whether how I'm just curious how it goes. But that 1 million bug bounty, I might have to go ahead and focus on that.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. If you're already a developer, and that's it's kind of an invisible hand of the market thing, which I think people don't really click with necessarily, is that people just think these bug bounty programs, or like running a node or a different thing, or like running an IPFS server, things like that, when you can be involved in those things or be aware of them and not kind of make the connection that somebody, at the end of the day, somebody has to actually do it, right? It's not like Ethereum puts up $1 million bug bounty and then magically out of the ether, someone just like pops up and claims the bounty and fixes a critical bug. No, there's got to be actual people. It might not even be that many. It might be 10, it might be 5, it might be 100 on a global scale, tiny pool of people, but a few people who actually dig into the details, okay, line by line, what's going on here. And there's not a big pool of people that can do this stuff. Like being a good developer, especially one, like you have to be a pretty good developer already to be at the level where you can just load up some open source repos and just figure it all out yourself. Not to mention the fact that you've got to be specialized in particularly those languages. And then when it comes to crypto, you need to understand a lot of the cryptography and the maths, and there might be more niche elements to it. So there's not necessarily all that many people. Most of the people who could potentially spot the bugs are already working on it, kind of thing. So I guess they can use any help they can get. So $1 million might be pretty cheap in that regard.
Yeah, I think $1 million. I wonder if that's for a pool of bugs or a specific.
It would probably have to be critical. It would have to be like a critical issue. I think it's up to 1 million, right? So
I think that might be, if they ever paid out $1 million, I think that might be the biggest bug bounty ever for one bug or a critical bug that was found. I think Google, that's up in Google level kind of like payouts, which is really impressive actually.
I mean, that really
from looking at it,
yeah. Go on.
It just kind of goes and shows like how big crypto is, kind of like, and how important it is to the market. 1 million for a bug, that's, like I said, it's like Google level, top FANG level kind of bug.
Yeah, but it's more. I guess it really comes down to the direct incentivization as well too, like Google or other things. I mean, because there have been huge. There was that OpenSSL bug a while ago. There have been huge issues found on the internet and stuff, and partly people, the devs that find and fix this stuff are not some millionaire rock stars. Society doesn't just heap money onto them. I mean, there is an element that, okay, devs do tend to do okay because it's a pretty well paid profession, especially once you're good. And at the upper end, as like we're saying, once you've specialized down into a small niche, then the people who need those skills really, really badly need those skills, and there's not many places to get them. So in that regard, it's kind of indirectly you can get paid for finding some of these bugs, because probably the reputation or the credibility or the notoriety from fixing a large bug and getting picked up by Google or Facebook or whatever is probably worth as much, or if not more, than the actual bug itself, but the bug bounty itself. So it is kind of interesting how it plays in that way. But that's like $1 million. Like, for instance, if you wanted to hire someone in the NBA, this would be nothing. This would get you nowhere. But it's like critical network saving bug on Ethereum. Wow, tons of money, you know. Like,
that's a good way to put it in perspective, actually.
So it's just you know, you wanted to get a Kanye song written. It's like, I don't know, the world's money's weird like that. Things reach their own level, I guess.
Yeah, that number might be a lot bigger in a couple of years as well. You know,
the bigger
depends on how it goes.
Yeah, the bigger it grows, the more money will be invested in it. Which it's just that incentives just playing into itself, right? The bigger it gets, the more money there is, the more people that get involved, the bigger it gets. So that's why it's global reserve currency, because it's just eventually we're just going to just crush off everything that stands in the way, basically. That's the plan anyhow. All right. And then let's have a chat about Jet. Here we go. Create.flipstarter.me. So this is your project that you've made with Flipstarter. I think most listeners to the show should understand or know a little bit about Flipstarter. We were talking about it on the last episode with BCH Latam, but it might be worth giving a little bit of a overview from your perspective, given that it is, you know, your area of expertise. But create.flipstarter.me is your sort of plugin or project, I guess, that has got an online tool to create, manage, and share crowdfunding campaigns without self-hosting or trusting a centralized server. No credit card or sign up is required. So essentially, Flipstarter itself, the whole protocol at the network layer in terms of coordinating everybody buying in to the crowdfunding model, is all decentralized. And now it's just adding another level of decentralization in terms of the place that people go to find the info about how to contribute, which at the moment somebody's just hosting on a web server somewhere, also getting decentralized in that way. So I don't know. Am I just talking? Can you explain? So is
that's correct.
That what it is? Yeah.
But that wasn't the main goal. Technically, I actually really just wanted it to be easier to create a Flipstarter. Because I started it, I think, February or March, because of the Canadian trucker protest and the GoFundMe and Give Send Go kind of like fiasco. And so I really just wanted an easy way to get people, because a lot of them were skeptical of crypto, and I just wanted to, you know, use my skills to kind of make something that they can actually go ahead and use and see for themselves, instead of having somebody else create it for them, which kind of makes it a little bit more custodial. And I wanted to do it in a way where it didn't have the same flaws as a GoFundMe or a Give Send Go, which is centralization, because anybody could go ahead and technically make a Flipstarter where everything's running on their server, and so technically, since it's still using Bitcoin under the hood, it's completely non-custodial, but it's still it's not permissionless, because now you have to have permission from the server to kind of store that information there. Or for somebody getting access, they can go ahead and blacklist some contributions for some reason if it came from tornado.cash, or something linked up to something that's censored, or they got pressured to keep away. So what I wanted to go ahead and do was make sure that wouldn't be possible with the alternative, because otherwise, what's the point of working on it if it has the same issues or similar issues as the GoFundMe at the layer that people are dealing with, which is typing it in the website or clicking a link and going to the fundraiser. And so I solved this with IPFS. IPFS just happened to go ahead and solve the ease of use issue and the centralization issue. Now you can go ahead and go to create.flipstarter.me, fill out the form. It's the same form that you get with the server version. So the title, your name, description of your campaign, your goal, and then I'll go ahead and create a website So you'll get a new link, and that'll take you to your new campaign. And it's just like it's pretty easy. I don't know if it can get any easier, to be honest, for creating a Flipstarter. It's just on top of that, it's completely it's completely decentralized. It's permissionless. That's why there's no credit card or sign up required, because technically, and even the site itself is on IPFS, so it can actually. I don't even need to keep it up on. Technically, you can go ahead and get this down onto IPFS. Other people can go ahead and start hosting it, and so you don't need my domain name. The domain name is actually the most centralized part about the whole thing. So you don't even technically need that to kind of you for sure don't need that to access create Flipstarter.me. So if somebody took me down, as long as other people kept that hash and continue developing it, it'll continue to survive. It's uncensorable, which is dope. And so that's
that's amazing. I mean, and I think this is how things are going to evolve more and more as the ball sort of gets rolling, right? I'm not convinced that it's really what was that?
Oh, I said God willing.
Oh yeah. As well. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, I think, for instance, the whole Bitcoin thing, both BCH and crypto as a whole, kind of is moving in that direction where all these projects they are decentralized, right? Like there's no devs that you can sort of take out of it and just stop it. It's not it's out of anyone's control, really. And I think what we're going to see is more and more of these smaller little sub projects. So for instance, it's obviously it started with the actual node software itself has to get to a point where there's enough different people who know, and maybe it's not tons, but there's enough that know what is going on and are connected into it all, that everything operates, right? And then you have kind of like wallets, especially so I'm thinking of the Electron Cash desktop wallet, but there's others too, where it started with just one. Well, it came from Electrum, but somebody just started that as this is my wallet, and then slowly a couple other devs kind of plug into it, and a few more users get started, so there's a bit more incentive, and then at a certain point it's self-sustaining, where the project creator can just step away from it, like Satoshi style, and it just keeps carrying on. And then, or a derivative of it, as it gets forked later on, somebody's making new versions of it. And then this kind of same thing is happening. And so eventually we're just going to have this whole stack of stuff, which just adds to the existing technology stack of, JavaScript or the internet, IPFS, all these things. Just they slowly build up enough momentum that they become independent of the creator, as long as enough of the pieces are open source. So it's really amazing to see you chipping into that revolution. And I think we're going to get more and more. Those options are just going to outcompete like this. I can see this beating. I don't know how much money and millions of dollars and whatever Give, Send, Go and so on, that they have. They probably have on their staff 15 developers or whatever, probably more. But those developers are busy making, a slicker like check-in flow or so something like that. And you don't even need that, right? You're just already past that stage by default. So it doesn't matter. Just you on your own can make a product. The weakness here is not the technology part. It's just the consumer awareness, right? Which is going to come kind of over time. But within the Bitcoin Cash community, this stuff already operates beautifully on a fraction of the resources that the centralized providers have. So it's really just a matter of time before they start crushing them totally. At least that's how I see it. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you're looking for a stack, cash stack is what I think cash stack is what Chris Troutner calls it. And I'm a fan of that, kind of like, because there are layers to this decentralization, and the blockchain is like the base layer. Along with IPFS or IPFS would be a higher layer, because it's dealing with not just storage, but how people access it as an application. So when it comes to a desktop when it comes to Bitcoin notes or the desktop wallets like Electron Cash, Those are binaries that you can download online. And so it is, as long as you're able to go ahead and get those binaries, then you're good to go. There's no way to really stop that. And that's why you don't see the government trying to actually, put in an earnest effort to stop it, because it'd be impossible. But when it comes to websites that are actually, highly centralized, the domain name is an important part, because most people just remember the domain name. So one day, once people go ahead and start, getting wise to how IPFS works, and only a few people need to, they would be able to go ahead and bootstrap the rest afterwards. So it is technically unstoppable. It's just what the common person, what the everyday person, are not aware of how it works. But that can come along in time. But yeah, but the way that the reason why IPFS works for uncensored, making it censorship resistant, is because the web isn't used to it's not the same as a desktop application, where you can actually get the code. You're relying on a central server behind that domain name to kind of give you that information. And so what IPFS does is, spreads it out so that it's possible to work in all different kind of scenarios. Which is it's really building off the same idea as Bitcoin for the most part, and we're trying to get it uncensorable so that nobody can really, they don't even want to try to stop it, because it would be a clusterfuck to even attempt it.
So Vikes198 first time chatter asks, what about non-binaries? It sort of sounds like some kind of political joke, but if it is for projects that are not just distributable as a binary, are there such things? What happens in those cases if they can't just be hosted up and you're good to go, right?
Could you ask that question one more time? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I guess that's right. I'm also not entirely clear. Like with I think the idea is that so the binary for a computer program is just the compiled code, and like you were saying, if any communication medium, radio waves, you could write it down on a piece of paper, right? You could just print out the ones and zeros. It would be massive, right? But you could theoretically do it for a computer program, and then as long as you have some way to distribute that, you will be able to get it to somebody else who will be able to recompile and run that software. So I think the question, okay, it was a joke. All right.
Yeah, it was a joke.
you got me then.
Clear.
You got. I was like, come on, what is this? I had to ask. You got to have like a user in the chat who doesn't know what the computer binaries are. Anyway, damn. But isn't Bitcoin perfect? Okay, all right. You got me, Vikes198. I'm glad. First time in the chat. I'm gonna keep an eye out for you. Anyway, whatever. You got once you got the binaries being distributed, you're all good. So you're running a Flipstarter for phase 1 of doing the development here. And so I like the way you've done this, because you did phase 0, which is that you basically just did it on your own. As far you didn't get any funding for that, right? You just were like, I'm going to make this project. I'm going to do it phase 0. Got that, built the sort of MVP, and now you're Flipstarting 7 BCH for the phase 1, which is adding some of those better UI elements, like you're talking, making it easier for people to get involved. So work through the details of this campaign.
So I spent since the Canadian trucker thing, I've been working on Flipstarter.me pretty much the entire time, just to go ahead and get it out there, because I'm tired of explaining things to people, and it's it's really hard to kind of communicate, especially when you're talking about IPFS, the benefits, how it works, what it could look like. And so and I've attempted it a few times and it turned out so well, but this time I went ahead and it's the whole flow seems pretty nice. Anybody can go ahead and try it, by the way. Flipstarter.me or create.flipstarter.me and give it a shot. It's real quick, and then you can even test out giving yourself a little donation and then revoking it and all that. It's pretty sweet. And so phase 1 is so that was the MVP to kind of like show the community, or show that it can happen this way, it can work this way, and how, so they have access to it and the code's out there and whatnot. Next step was to kind of go ahead and get all the nice to haves, because those things take up a whole lot of time. I cut out a lot of the nice to haves just so I can get the MVP out there. And so small, I can't make big promises. I don't want to make big promises either, because they can fall through at any time. You never know. And so next step is go ahead and knock out the minimal that we need for a stable product that's actual normal people, regular people can kind of use, because sometimes there's a little every application has these like little quirks that might not be user friendly, especially when you're a dev. Just hammering out the code and you testing it. It's like you can kind of like get a little disassociated from that. And so once it gets out there, you can kind of see other people's perspectives on how it could work or should work and whatnot. And so that's what the 7 BCH is go ahead and knock out. That plus documentation and creating libraries so that can be reused in different applications in the future. So kind of like creating a base layer so we can kind of like grow from there. Because I can see it going from, because I said that's phase 1. Phase 2, I can imagine it being like a phone application compiled, like you have more knowledge about this since you're a mobile developer, but like capacitor JS type of deal. That's one option. Desktop application, which is 100% peer-to-peer. Because once you have a desktop application, you can do the TCP connections. So you can create a campaign real easy, just like the same UI. But you have a full IPFS node on your desktop. And so it's 100% uncensorable once you create it. You don't have to worry about, and easy too, because you don't have to worry about create.flipstarter.me as a domain or something like that. You don't have to worry about getting down the IPFS hash that's hiding behind that domain name or whatnot. In fact, that can happen automatically behind the scenes. And so that really would be completely uncensorable. No, when I say completely uncensorable, I mean no inconveniences technically, minus downloading a desktop application. That's would be really sweet to kind of like move on from this current version. And so the whole idea is kind of like a branch out from there, kind of get it stable, have all the documentation testing and a nice UI flow for just that website, because that's the way that most people will be interacting with it, but also have different applications using the similar code to kind of like make it even easier. I can see it working. I would like to get a mobile demo or something by the time the BCH conference happens, because I would love to see people going ahead and contributing or getting donations for something to kind of go ahead and buy something collaboratively, on the island once they meet each other. Maybe buy a helicopter ride or something like that together. Just chipping in to kind of go ahead and do something wild or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're such in the early days of all this Flipstarter type of stuff. So I'm so glad you're working on this, honestly, because like we were talking about, you only need 1 or 2 devs who are making it a focus. And then if you can make some libraries or having the sort of the building blocks there, kind of paving the way a little bit, that will attract other people to come in and have a look at it. I mean, I'm looking at it, right? I don't know exactly how soon I'll be able to get involved, but I do like your idea of having a mobile component to it, right? That there could be some way to have just a sort of little Flipstarter app going on your phone, and especially if you pair that with a way to actually link up with people, right? The like I was saying before about the weakness being the consumer awareness, so you need to have some way to get people interested. But once you make it user friendly enough, then the promotion is a piece of cake. Because the worst thing is you have something that's super cool, but it's kind of difficult, and you spend a lot of time getting people to take a look, and then they take a look, but it's not quite there yet. They get frustrated, they don't get it, blah blah blah. So, but once you've got that UI is slick, and it's just like, here it is, then it's just a matter of finding the people who are looking for that product. And it doesn't even need to be that many. You just need to know where to go to find them. And the power of this kind of stuff, like there's industries around microloans and stuff like that already kind of going on in the world, but that kind of stuff is just a drop in the bucket compared to what could be done once you can just plug in the whole sort of Bitcoin Cash, the global elements, the permissionless aspect really start to shine then, in a way that crypto being running through so much through centralized exchanges and not peer-to-peer is not really taking advantage of right now, I would say. So
you can't even do anything even close to that using a centralized system like Binance, or it can never be as safe as it is with this layer 1 blockchain. I mean, this is like real, like low level when it comes to anyone can pay contracts. So what it's doing is like when you make a pledge, it cannot. When you make a pledge to its overall goal, it's just like Kickstarter. It won't. If the goal doesn't actually go ahead and complete, then your money is sent back to you, or similar to that. Because in this case, it never gets sent anywhere at all, and so it's in your custody the entire time, which is great. So nobody can go ahead and take it away or deny you that service. People can go ahead and collaborate together as long as they're they know each other, they have the transactions and whatnot, or at least the organizer at least has it. And so I can imagine this for so many use cases, and you literally cannot do it with any other anything other than cryptography, from what I can understand. And so I think it really is a way that this can shine. Plus the collaboration and the networking part, I think is pretty interesting. It kind of forces people to kind of like connect with others to kind of make something happen, which is already the case in general for any kind of project. And also I think it'll just be fun.
Yeah, it seems pretty fun. And I think another area that is going to get innovation, but we're going to see this over time, and I like what you're doing here as well too, is the cultural element of it is still clearly very Genesis stage, right? So Flipstarter has been out for a while now. Obviously it was developed in the pre-run up to the fork with ABC. Yeah, so it's about 2 years old now, kind of time frame. And in that time, one of the criticisms I think that could be rightly levied against Flipstarter as it is today is that there's been a kind of low hit rate in terms of return for money, right? A lot of projects have got funded with a lot more money than they probably should have, that never really delivered, right? And I think that's not anything wrong with the technology or with Flipstarter or anything. That's just the community learning over time. Initially, it was the new shiny thing, and everybody was prepared to, give it a whirl, right? But now people are slowly becoming more judicious. Like, I think the standard has been rising in terms of how well documented your pitch needs to be, for instance, to get any funding. And at the same time, I think the scrutiny is going up on the amount of money that you ask for, particularly in a bear market. People are going to be a bit more, conservative about that. And so, like in this case, you've just got the 7 BCH. It's a small target. You've already shown that you've distributed. Hang on, is Jet like we've got the slides hosted on IPFS now? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so I downloaded the IPFS extension for Brave on my laptop, and I forgot that I've got them in the Brave chain sync, so it automatically popped up on the desktop, which is where I'm sharing the slides. And yeah, so sorry about that. Oh, wow. But I'm just trying to find your Flipstarter.
It's
Did
just
it work? It seemed like a
fun.flipstarter.me, right?
Yeah, fun.flipstarter.me. Yep. And did it work with IPFS? Because it does. Brave actually includes an IPFS node, which makes things so much simpler for awesome. censorship resistance. So you can have your. You really don't even actually when you use the Brave or the IPFS companion, it should show up. This is an IPFS site. And so that process where I said that my domain name is sort of the centralized part, Brave completely takes that away. So it'll go ahead and tell you that my site is already IPFS. So you can go ahead and jump to the real link to see the real hash and move on from there. And so that's, Brave and this IPFS Flipstarter works really well together and completely censorship resistant. So actually that's just as good. That's some very similar in power to actually having the desktop node, because Brave kind of includes that already right into the browser. And I imagine that's going to be the thing if IPFS gets bigger in the future as well.
Yeah, it just wasn't activated, so I had to go into my settings and install the extension essentially. But yeah, I'm on IPNS fun.flipstart.me, so ready to go.
Dope.
Yeah, and so it's a 7 BCH target. I think you are already nearly there, right? I think you already had like nearly 5.5 BCH. So hopefully with a bit of promotion on this show, a couple people chip in and it just gets over the line there, because that would be awesome. But I think this is an example of how things are going to develop, that to get a Flipstarter funded in the future, you will need to have, like, things have gone from you just need to be excited about Flipstarter and throw up a page, right? But now I think you've got to have a pretty solid pitch with your Flipstarter. And then on top of that, now I think it's going to start to be, you need to have prior art. You need to have shown, look, I've already done step 1, phase 0 myself. So I'm committed to this project. I've bought in, I've spent my own time, my own sweat equity, etc., to make this work, and demonstrating that you've got the skills to do. It's sort of like building a resume. That's another thing that can come out of this kind of stuff is, are we going to get, once we get better tooling as well, I don't expect you to necessarily make, but maybe at some point, or hopefully somebody else can come in and collaborate on this. Maybe I will. But there's long been the idea of having Flipstarter accountability needs to be kind of better, records of who ran a Flipstarter, how much they got funded for, what got delivered, like following that up, or at least making it easy for the person who makes the Flipstarter to automatically, back things up, or get reminders to themselves that they promised this and this, the formatting on the page of just how it's displayed, like that you could have a results section that matches up the things with a nice graphic of ticks here and crosses here, and, timeline, Gantt charts, whatever, right? There's so much that can be built on this that would just make it all a breeze. And the more efficiently those systems click into place, and the more people click with these ideas, the more efficient the community is going to be at allocating its own resources around, which is just going to accelerate us ahead of the competition, both crypto and fiat. So yeah, I think that's amazing.
Decentralized businesses. I think Roger actually mentioned that when I first heard about Flipstarter. He was like, "This is technically decentralized finance," and that kind of stuck with me after I heard that. And that's kind of like the idea where I like it to go. I mean, the phone app and the desktop app, that's cool and all, but that's kind of like the infrastructure layer, kind of getting people like aware of it and being able to use it easily. But there's so much more, like you were just saying, that we can kind of do from a business kind of perspective, and investing kind of in perspective, because that's what contributors are. They're technically investing into. I mean, then they might not get a monetary return back, but they're looking for, except maybe in the long run with the BCH price going up based off the projects, but they're trying to get a return on something generally, and so making that better is one of my goals for the future, God willing. Not just making it easier to so updates, it's low hanging fruit that's inside my Flipstarter fund, Flipstarter me. I'm going to do that with IPNS, which is related to it's something, it's like a technology with IPFS to kind of get something that you can get updates or mutable. It's immutable. IPFS is immutable. IPNS, you sign something. It's like a record. It's almost like DNS, where you sign a new record every time something changes. And so I want to go ahead and implement that. That's phase 2, to kind of like get notifications. And then if there's a phone app, I can actually go ahead and possibly have a server running that can send that as a push notification or something like that. I've also got a little Telegram. I sent it to you, like a little video about like a little Telegram bot that can also do something similar. I can imagine it being really useful, or that's actually part of the accountability side. I was just experimenting integrating Telegram with Flipstarter so that people can have like a channel to communicate and talk about the Flipstarter after it's created. Possibly even if the bot is the admin and the organizer isn't technically the admin 100%, then it can
the community can get at them.
It'll stay alive even if the organizer wanted to just go ahead and disappear. You can have that a little bit more accountability if there's like some automated systems kind of like integrated with Flipstarters. But that's sort of a separate problem than specifically trying to get Flipstarters easy enough that the everyday user can jump in on. They probably will learn the exact same lessons we do about giving your money to organizations or people who being excited just to give it to, and then you never know whether they deliver or not, and so they'll probably learn that. But my goal was to go ahead and just get that to target that outside of the regular BCH community, but making it easy and making it accountable. All these problems with Flipstarter, I think, is really interesting from the business perspective, and I'm very down to kind of like explore it some more. I think I mentioned to you, there's even the idea of like being able to buy bulk goods with this is kind of but I can see so many applications for anyone can pay Flipstarter contracts. So for the audience, the idea is to go ahead and buy bulk goods at a cheaper price collaboratively. So people are pitching in, and if it falls through, then nobody loses any money. And I feel like that's a perfect application for Flipstarters, and maybe a way to go ahead and get into the market with the supply chains. Talking with businesses how they want to go ahead and contribute, or depends on who the end user is, who's interested in that kind of like technology. But I think it's really interesting to kind of explore. So yeah, there's a couple different tracks that we could go on. I would like the community kind of like explore these. I want Flipstarter.me to kind of be a place that people can go ahead and pitch in and collaborate and make it actually happen. I think this could be somewhat of like a low layer for all the rest, possibly. Sort of like an open source way of kind of like building actual business models.
So
Jet.
I just demoed the IPFS Flipstarter here. Fantastic, so smooth. Curious about the web wallet, like the integrated wallet, but I didn't want to have to write down another seed at the moment, so I just went with the traditional the Electron Cash plugin.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. The web wallet, you don't technically have to write it down. I mean, you should. Everybody should write down their private key, especially in this early phase of the project. But about less than a month ago, I integrated auto refunds. And so when you use the web wallet, it'll go ahead and create a time lock refund transaction that also gets uploaded along with your comments and alias. And so so we can go ahead and do automatic refunds and whatnot. So if my Flipstarter failed, everybody will have access to those refund transactions as well. It's on IPFS and it's all like linked in the blockchain as well. And so anybody can go through and refund those things once it passes the due date.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And but basically, it would be that just one person out of the Flipstarter would see, okay, it's past the time, and then they can fire off everyone's refund transaction, or only their own?
They all have the same time lock, and so it's already signed by the person. I mean, by the when you made the web wallet pledge, and so it's just waiting for that time lock. And I could go ahead and do that with my server, but that wasn't part of phase 0. That would be nice to have, but technically anybody can go ahead and do it. And so I wasn't really that pressed to kind of like make that automatic kind of thing.
Yeah, and we should definitely that's somewhere where I think a little iteration on this is also going to be pretty key, because as I was contributing to this Flipstarter just a couple hours ago, like the signing of the messages and stuff like that, I still wasn't 100% sure. I got to be honest, there's a bit of magic there where I was not really sure what message am I signing. Is this the comment that I've made to go into the Flipstarter? Like, it just sort of it steps you through it. It says, okay, sign this, click this, but it would just a couple lines of explanation there, maybe a nice graphic, something like that could
that was nice to have.
A lot.
Documentation.
I know I'm asking for a lot. I'm being the classic user, which is you do the dev grind, you work super hard, you just get past bug after bug after bug, you make something, and the first thing someone's like, the way you know it's good is if somebody says, where's this? They don't say, oh, good job on you did this, you did this, you did this, you did. If there's, there's a bug, you're going to hear about it instantly. But if it's smooth, you're not going to hear a single thing about that. You're going to hear, where's the next thing, right? So that's it. It's amazing. It's doing great. It's doing great, man.
That's the truth. But when the messages and signing, that is a little complex. I did put in a pull request to the original Flipstarter plugin so that we can get signed. It already had something technically already laid out there. It just wasn't implemented. But we can do this signatures at some point. Hopefully, when it gets merged in, then it'll be automatic, and you don't have to do that final step of signing the message. No, the second to last step of signing the message.
Yeah.
Because since it's all on IPF, it's all decentralized. We don't want people faking or spoofing a transaction, and so it has to be signed by the contributor to be sure, so we can display it. If that signature doesn't match, it'll just show up as anonymous, because technically the contributions will still be good. We're just not sure about the extra data attached to it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, cool. So let's rock on with the next thing then. Sort of related to this, in a way is. Well, in a big way, is this open source development funding. There's an article I've got here called Myth-Busting, We Need a Developer Fund by Tom Zander, who's the Flowy developer, and he had written this article on read.cash, which I recommend everybody look it up. The link is on the slide, but I'm sure you can just Google Myth-Busting, We Need a Developer Fund, Tom Zander, read.cash. Will probably come up. But essentially, the point he was making was back when the Bitcoin Cash community was having these debates about who funds developers, right? How do they get the money to work on the protocol? And we're seeing it recur as it always does. Like we talked about the bug bounties in Ethereum. How do you incentivize people to do security review and stuff like that? It's super boring. Even devs who love coding, there's always parts of it that people are like, God, give me a break. I don't have time for this. This is like grunt work, the just plugging together the Lego pieces. It's not really exciting or innovative. It's just necessary. And so he wrote this article about that. And I mean, even now you can see in BTC, they're having what's his name? Vladimir, or I think it was him, or maybe there was someone else. I don't know. Some of the Bitcoin core devs are kind of giving up or quitting or moving on, or however you want to put it, because they're sort of like, this is this thankless job under tons of pressure. Nobody's paying for me. I mean, Blockstream funded a bunch of them for a while, but like Peter Todd, he's out of there. Different people, the incentives dried up basically once the project got captured. And so now you've got in Bitcoin Cash, you had the resistance to the IFP. So eCash are on their own fork. And this kind of FUDs, sort of as it was at the time, was, well, we just don't have any devs, we're going to run out, it's going to be a disaster. And so he has this excellent article where he steps through that there's a lot of angles to this you need to consider. And one of the best points, I think, was about the fact that if you have a fund, and there are coins that have that, there's XCC obviously has a fund, Dash also have their funding operation and so on. As soon as you put that in, you create a central point, a honeypot, essentially, that people are going to fight over for the resources. And then not only do you have people trying to scramble in and get to that amount of money, but they also are incentivized to continue the flow of that money, right? With a Flipstarter, it's nice because you fund your project, you do your project, and that's it. It's like a one-time deal, and then you can run another Flipstarter and you can chain them together like that. But if there was a way to run a Flipstarter that just paid out, a certain amount of funds like a block reward, exactly like the IFP, then that can just continue in perpetuity. And obviously over time, you're going to get lazier and lazier if you've got that guaranteed reward coming in, essentially. And even if that money would be better spent elsewhere, when has anybody in the history of the world ever got money and said, you know what, I don't need this, I'm good, and let me give that back? Like, once you've got the gold mine of the income stream coming in, you become dependent on it. It's just natural. So I think for all those reasons, and there's even more argument, but I think those are some good starting points as to, well, if you say, okay, we don't want to have that kind of community involuntarily or voluntarily funded war chest that then pays some central developers. How do we pay the developers? So I've got a couple thoughts here, but what do you think? Do we need more funding for devs, and how are devs getting paid in Bitcoin Cash?
I don't think they're getting paid very much, but there's so many different markets here. There's so many different developers working on different things. I'm a front end kind of a developer for the most part, whereas there's the core team, like general protocols types of, and the ones working on the full nodes, and so they have a completely different pay scale than somebody like me. And there's entry level folks who just want to get in and build something to kind of to contribute to the open source world. And so there's so many different types. So I don't know how many are full time or looking for some kind of income, but I do know that everybody in Bitcoin and crypto wants crypto to be kind of like the world reserve currency. And so we do want to get paid in this currency, especially for developers who can contribute to the overall to this base layer of the economy, basically. And so I'm not sure where they're getting their money from for the most part. I'm not privy to all that, but in the case of Bitcoin, it seems like it's coming mostly from corporations or education, kind of like grants or things like that. And I'm not sure when it comes to the Bitcoin Cash community, to be honest. Do you guys know where it's coming from?
Well, Well, that's the beauty of decentralization. It's a bit opaque, but I mean, so one thing I think is the thing about developers, which non-devs sort of need to get a handle on, is okay. So, firstly, if you are a developer, especially a good one, you can make money. Okay, it's not really a question at all whether or not developer jobs are in demand. They're in sky high demand. And there's tons of people who will pay you to do that work of building their website for their VC funded whatever with millions of dollars. Okay, so if you are a developer, you've got a 9 to 5 job, pretty much there whenever you want it. You're not going to be dead broke if you can write some decent JavaScript. I assure you, I guarantee that. So that's the first element. The second element is that developers do actually like doing development, as strange as it is. Like, people, even if it is their job, and like I said, people might have aspects to it that they can't really be bothered about, especially if it's on a passion or a side project and they're not getting directly paid for it. But devs do like solving hard problems. They do like building cool things for the future, and they do like engineering. It's like a chicken and the egg thing. It's not that they got into development, well, some did, I guess, to make money, and then afterwards they're just mercenaries. No, the majority of devs, especially the good ones, got into it because they were already into it. They were already interested. They were already playing around with things, or they already had that engineering, solving problems type of mindset. So there is some capacity, not limitless capacity, definitely, but there's some capacity for things to get built basically for free, just because the devs doing it like want to do it. So I've done a little bit of Bitcoin Cash development, not very much, but a little bit. And what I've done, I haven't been, getting paid like explicitly based on that. But at the same time, I'm developing my dev skills and I'm having fun doing it, right? To a certain extent. So I think the idea of everything needing to be paid like gazillions of dollars or whatever is just straight up wrong, because there's research, and Tom Zander kind of goes into this a bit, and I don't know all the specifics, but the premise is that if you are getting, the more you're getting paid past a certain point, it decreases your motivation, right? If you get paid to do something that you enjoy, well, then it becomes an obligation, because now you're like trading your time and resources and whatever for that thing, rather than I just want to do it. You can take the magic out of it if you give someone all this extra money. Not to saying that we've got enough money or that, whatever, but there's certainly a role of personal satisfaction. Like you said, all the devs can also buy into the coin. And in fact, they're some of the best people you want to buy into the coin, because they have analyzed the code and figured that this is going to work. If there's a reason the BCH developers are the BCH developers and not the Ethereum developers, because they looked into it and they thought, no, this is actually got a future. And there's also a sort of element, I guess, of companies paying for developers either directly because they need a certain thing, so they hire somebody to build that thing for them. But hopefully, as time goes on, and we do already see some of this, there are, like you said, general protocols is a classic example of, if a company is built on the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, if they've built a ton of code and products and industry connections in that niche, then they will basically, it's like take a loss. Like, it's not directly profitable for them to spend money on funding, let's say, node developers, but they have to do it because the way Amory always used to explain it was, it's like paying your insurance, which is that if you're a builder, if you're a business in any sense, if your infrastructure breaks down, your business is going to be screwed. So you have to reinvest back in the grassroots of the economy. So that's not necessarily true for crypto agnostic businesses, right? Like exchanges, for instance. There's a pro and a con. If Coinbase, they won't necessarily chip in much to BCH development, but on the other hand, they don't ask much from BCH. As long as it's there, they will get themselves sorted. They'll run a node. They'll kind of do their part. And then on the other hand, you have companies that are built into the scene and are bought in, and for them, they will do a lot more directly to help the coin and fix any problems. But on the other hand, they're gonna need more help. They got to get their money from somewhere. They got to make money. They got to have a business. They're charging customers and all that, right? So like the podcast is, I think, a really good example of that. I want to see, and I'll be very excited the more companies and projects and products that start, which are BCH focused, because I'm I'll donate to your Flipstarter, I'll donate to a lot of people's Flipstarters, or to dev work, or put in dev work myself, because I can't just switch off to Dash or like some other thing. I need BCH to work, so I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen.
To kind of get into a little bit of Tom's article, because it was a good article when I read it, and there's definitely some diminishing returns when it comes to investment, and so when people are I think even Bitcoin developers have seen a similar thing. Once the money started rolling in, it's not like development and contributions, shot through the roof because money was coming in. It actually either stagnated or possibly even dipped. Maybe the growth actually stopped growing as fast. So it's a phenomenon we see all over the place. It's diminishing returns when it comes to just throwing money at a problem. And passionate people, and passionate people and people who are trying to learn, and they have some intrinsic motivation going on. They are able to kind of get around those issues a bit and actually produce more than somebody who's being paid a whole bunch to kind of do something that's something that somebody went ahead and thought up, or I don't know where they get their ideas sometimes when money is starting to flow, but for some reason it does skew our thinking somehow. And so that makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to a foundation that's all the money, most of the money in the economy, or that small economy is going towards that foundation. Then that's just the effects are that much more impactful to the whole community. So the diminishing returns is on everybody's money, all the contributions, instead of just that specific business and their little context. It affects the whole coin at that point. So one solution, in my opinion, is just more, instead of just one single foundation, multiple companies. Just keep it as decentralized as possible. That might have an issue with the people complaining about where the money's going or how much, but that is part of what business is, and trying to market and letting people know. And are debates like these about whether the effectiveness or not, because that's part of the solution as well, as pointing out what these problems are, so we can actually learn from our mistakes, in a sense, if you want to call it a mistake, but just learn from our experiences a bit, and move forward. There was two things, since I'm a developer and I'm always thinking about new ideas and whatnot. There's at least one thing that I wanted to mention that I thought would be kind of interesting. It's always been something I've been playing, but since I've been focusing on Flipstarter, I wasn't able to kind of explain it very well. Most people do not understand what the hell I'm saying when I explain this, by the way. So just to prepare you guys. But I can see a foundation absolutely playing a role that benefits the community in a way that I've never seen before, and that would be and it would be any nonprofit could technically do this, and even a content creator could technically do this, but take in fiat from the donors, because most foundations are already taking in fiat for the cause or whatnot. Take in the fiat and ask those people who are giving the fiat for an address, right? And then sign that address as the entity who's taking in the fiat. Then people who have crypto could possibly go ahead, instead of giving it to the foundation, you can give it to the fiat donors. The fiat donors now they got an onboard into crypto, because they gave money and somebody else gave them crypto instead. So they have somewhat of a onboard. And so if they're already supportive of the foundation in a sense, there's no loss there technically. And if you're not interested in the foundation, you're just trying to get some crypto, it's an option. There's nothing illegal about going ahead and making a donation, and other people going ahead and donating back. And then maybe the foundation can go ahead and give some rewards, at least in the content creator sense. They can go ahead and give some rewards to the people, because now you have proof on the blockchain that somebody went ahead and refunded somebody else. And I can see that kind of you're generating value, you're getting the donations, and you can go ahead and do whatever you want with it, that your mission statement is. But you're also going ahead and giving up opportunity for people who are actually going ahead and donating and providing an on-ramp into the whole crypto economy, which I think would be pretty sweet. And the more organizations who do that, the better too. And so you can still you can have that kind of like side by side, but it's the added benefit of that centralization a bit. So if it's running as a 401c3 or whatever, nonprofit, then they can take in those donations. You can even get a tax return and get a little bit of crypto on top of that. I don't think you can technically, I don't think you can technically tax that. And so I just think it's like an interesting avenue.
Yeah, well, that's like the underwriting idea that people have done with various merchants, where somebody says, okay, I'm going to like sponsor this merchant because I want to get some BCH and I've got fiat. People are going to come to the shop and they're going to pay in crypto. Well, maybe the merchant needs to cash out for volatility concerns, or they're not sold on the whole economy or whatever. So I'm just going to take the other side of that trade. And yeah, it's just a similar idea with the fundraiser and with like Flipstarter type fight, which I'd never actually thought of before, but I'm sure somebody could do it. I think when it comes to the whole incentives, that's why it's very important for the ecosystem to be friendly to developers, because if you have a lot of toxicity and a lot of drama and low appreciation and blah blah blah, if you're driving away developers that would work for free, like it's free, it's literally free to attract developers to your coin. If you just have a positive community that enjoys technical innovation, that is open to people coming in from other chains, all that kind of stuff, you can attract devs. That's why the cultural environment is something that everybody plays into, and it really has technical impacts, which in the end benefit or hurt the actual investors. So everybody should be aware of that, I think. Jet, do you have something you can chip in there?
Kind of. It's a little bit of a tangent, but still related. So especially because my schooling was paid for through a Flipstarter campaign, I've always had this, like distinct goal of, I want to build something on Bitcoin Cash that's a useful product for people, product or service, whatever that might be. And to me, the money isn't a concern at all, but the money is like inherently tied into opportunity cost, because I do have a day job. And so, well, I'd like to dedicate, those 8 to 12-hour days to Bitcoin Cash, I have to go and work at this day job to make sure that I survive. So I think there's some resources for like teaching yourself, but I don't think there's enough structure for new developers to come in and, even as a hobbyist, like tinker around for a year and get something that you could use as an open source project, right? Like you might have something that's working, but no other dev can contribute to it because there's no comments, or the structure is shit, or something like that. I think personal satisfaction is sustainable to the extent of those opportunity costs. Or I guess maybe I'm phrasing that wrong, but like you need to have the opportunity to be able to dedicate that time. And I think most people would, just from personal satisfaction, if they didn't have to worry about other things.
100%, man. I think about this kind of stuff a whole lot. I actually went to one of those schools where you learn for 6 months and they give you a job. I went through that like almost like a decade ago and whatnot. And then afterwards, I actually taught people. I went back and started teaching that class for onboarding, or not onboarding, but kind of like onboarding.
Yeah, onboarding. Yeah.
Onboarding the coding, and so those were fresh new people who'd never touched code before. They might be technically they might be technically inclined somewhere. They did like a test or something like that to kind of figure out the aptitude, but they didn't really touch code ever before, or maybe not even technology in general, or in a deep level. But anyways, so yeah, I think it's important to kind of like get in to make it easy for newer people to kind of get into the coin, because that could reduce costs by having more people coming in who are passionate and want to go ahead and contribute and whatnot. And I think that's to Tom's point in his article, because that is a decentralized way of kind of like getting people can go out and contribute to the knowledge base, because knowledge is pretty damn decentralizable, if that's a word. And so once you get that that knowledge distributed, then more people can kind of come in and contribute to projects. You don't really technically need a funding mechanism for that. You just need some dedication and people who are passionate to kind of like keep it going. I think so. Yeah, I think that's a super important part of like making it sustainable, making these projects sustainable and the coin sustainable, especially since it's all, for the most part, open source software.
I do think for like Aaron's case, and to a lesser extent in mine working with the ATM thing, like hardware costs, I know for him are, well, I don't know about scale. So hardware costs for the ATM has been the biggest setback, because even if I like, this was just, a someone a comment on Telegram, right? So that is through and through a passion project. But for me to test out some of the components and get them all shipped to me and exchange rates and all this, it's like so much of a hassle. And so the part of the Telegram group for that has been to kind of gauge interest. And there have been a few people, I think more influential people, that have kind of expressed their interest, but there hasn't been a lot of what I would consider end user interest. And so it's hard for me to justify not just the opportunity costs, but the actual monetary costs to even test and go through the MVP of this. I don't know. Software, I think, is a little bit different, because it's like if you've got a computer, you can kind of do it. But those hardware projects are a whole other level of tricky, I think.
Well, this is just reinventing the whole VC ecosystem from the ground up, basically, this is why a startup company, you don't just get a few devs and call it a day. I mean, the devs play a pretty important role, but you've got to have some product managers to keep things moving in the right direction. You got to make sure you have some good designers, some good UX people that are keeping an eye on it. And at some extent, that sort of bleeds into the salespeople, right? Where you need to be able to validate the idea and make sure it's something people want, because otherwise you're just throwing away money on something that nobody's going to need, and it's not going to last in the end, right? So there's a bit of a compounding effect where if the ecosystem is growing, that will attract more devs who'll build more products, and everything will go brilliantly like that. But in terms of getting the opportunity for people to have working on full time on BCH and to do projects like these, the funding is kind of, but that's where the Flipstarter, I mean, it's all coming together, right? Like you could just run a Flipstarter for how much money it would take you to make it. Say, this is my Flipstarter for prototype V1. These are the parts I need to get, or whatever, and this is the game plan. And just see if people care enough to give you the money, they will. And if they don't, what it costs you 20 minutes of your time to get it set up and promote it, right? So I think that's kind of the model that we need to be moving towards for the ecosystem to be funding new projects, where otherwise it wouldn't happen, like just validation at a very small scale.
Funders, I think, are just important as the developers and the marketers and the salespeople, the people who are actually going ahead and making the investment before you get to the stage of, because there's all that work up until before you actually make your first sale. It wasn't already pre-made to go ahead and sell it to somebody else. There needs to be investment into it, and so I think they're just as key as a part of the whole team as everybody else. Aaron was one of the folks who was thinking about using Flipstarter to kind of like bring down the price of hardware, because if we bought bulk, then the price would go down a whole lot. And so it'd be, but we have to figure out, how many people are interested in that, how much, where it's going to go, shipping and all that. But there's definitely a possibility there to kind of like use Flipstarters for not just not replacing, but making it easier for people, making it decentralized for investment, but also making it cheaper to kind of to build some of these bigger projects.
Is there anything in the works for having something like a single Flipstarter campaign where the payouts are incremental depending on milestones?
No, that'll take some coordination, since it's signatures. Some coordination or pre-signature, pre-signing of multiple goals.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so And the thing is that they have to be you'd actually have to go ahead and not have it completely open, because I think technically somebody can go ahead and make the payout. Say it's one of the smaller ones and there's a bigger one, bigger goal that you're going for, and anybody, as long as if they have all the contributions and signatures, they can make that payout themselves before you reach the
Right.
And so you want to have something where it's not, if your goal is to kind of get a bigger one, then you want to prevent that somehow. And so that might take a little bit more. That might be better served by a single server, because in that case, you don't want everybody to have access to the data. And so, but there's ways to kind of like figure that out, I'm sure. One of my goals is kind of like not just support anyone can pay contracts, but to kind of play around with the different types of contracts on this Flipstarter stuff, and make it easy to kind of create one. So different people who have a similar business model to go for can also go ahead and easily one-click create it in a web page.
But that multi-stage stuff basically is already doable, like you're demonstrating yourself, where just at a cultural level, that if you just run it, you can publish your plan. Okay, here's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you can spec it all out. Here's the cost, here's the blah blah blah, and you just run each one as a separate Flipstarter. So that's already doable today. I don't think we need a ton of.
I think what Jeff's going for is that since prices can come down, the more you get, then you want to have like multiple. Is that what you're getting at, Jet?
Well, no, I think Jeremy's right, but I'm being the asshole end user where it's like, well, why don't we have this? Like, why isn't it automated yet?
Gotcha.
Like, rather than having, yeah, we do have that. You can create multiple campaigns, you can publish your plans, but you have to be so much more coordinated than having this one page that people go to and go, okay, well, I'd like to contribute, and whatever step along the way we get to.
But that's just UI, right?
Yeah.
And this is another thing that is going to develop over time, is just the surrounding tooling in terms of the current Flipstarters, the accountability and stuff. People have just been left to their own devices as to how do they communicate with people. At the moment, it's just pretty ad hoc because people are doing these kind of one-shot, like kind of scrappy campaigns, right? But in the future, it'll probably be, you can sign up to the Flipstarter, and the Flipstarter service already provides with it, like you were talking about with the Telegram bots and stuff. Okay, then it sets you up a communication channel where people can go for updates, and it automatically records, segments as things go. Like, all this stuff can be built. It's just the surrounding infrastructure, not a lot of the blockchain stuff really needs to change. And even though it probably will, because with there's a big tangent, but like cash tokens, with that coming in, that just can create a whole range of things, right? Where people are paying into the contract and they're getting out, tokens for their contribution, and then maybe they can use that to vote on what is the next stage, or backed by the fact that they have actually provably contributed. And there's a million variations of that going to be coming up as well too, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for that. But that's almost like a year away. But I am preparing for that when that comes around, God willing, because there's a lot of use cases. It actually might simplify a lot certain parts of Flipstarter actually overall. And so I'd be interested. You can definitely get an arbiter. So right now, if you wanted an arbiter in between, you can't really do that with the current contract, because it'd be hard to kind of return the money back the way that it's built, because you can't do that within the contract. With Bitcoin script right now. But with cash tokens, you can kind of like keep every time you put out everybody who puts in a BCH, they can get a token back, and that's kind of keeping track of how much you put in a sense. And so it makes it so much easier to kind of keep handle state at that point. And so, that's how I am Uname kind of like explains cash tokens. He says it's not just about tokens, it's about state, passing around state. That's exactly the benefit when it comes to Flipstarter. It keeps the state about who, by having the tokens, you're basically proving that you put in money into a certain Flipstarter contract. And so when you have that, you can actually even have an arbiter in between that will actually go ahead and give payouts to, you can have a blind arbiter, I guess, who can give payouts to the actual recipient and whatnot over time, or maybe they have to go ahead and submit, I don't know, timesheet or expense report or something like that. But it can be, but he'd be blind, so he can either send it to the recipient, or if say that they broke the contract or something like that, they can have everybody else redeem their original contributions back afterwards. But they can't go ahead and
steal the
mess
money
in
themselves.
between.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that would be a great market. And there might be possibilities to kind of do that right now without cash tokens in certain senses, but it won't be as good as when cash token comes around.
That's just mind blowing. That's going to be amazing. I can already see it. The desktop application with the like funding, and here's all the proposals, and you can click on it, and it's got a beautiful thing with a roadmap of everybody's things. And there's just one button, which is just like buy in. You just set a slider, how much, bam, you pay in, all the updates just flow back in there. There's there's a market where you can just sell off your shares in whatever project that you don't like. You're like, this is going down the drain, like sell me out, and like everything, like it's gonna be amazing. All right, we gotta move on, and we're never gonna get to the end of this show, but there's so much to all of this stuff. It's unreal. Yeah, we might have to do another Flipstarter deep dive at some point. Anyway, moving on, next topic.
Builders, man.
Yeah, we need more devs. Get involved. You want to be a dev? I mean, you can always hit me up. I'll point you in the right direction. Okay, running a node. So according to Blockchain, BCH has about 936 nodes. Bitcoin has about 7,323. I don't know how accurate that is. Sometimes people say there's 50,000 nodes they're running on Tor, like all this sort of stuff. It's hard to get a gauge of what is the real numbers. But I just wanted to talk a little bit. It sounds like maybe we'll need to do another episode dedicated to this at some point. But talking about running like nodes, because it sort of plays into this Flipstarter stuff as well too, which is that at the end of the day, somebody's got to have some of this hardware going somewhere, and the whole ecosystem built from the ground up kind of relies on it. Now, the lucky thing is you can have like 1,000 nodes can serve a lot of people, right? It's not like a one-to-one linear scaling type of thing. But on the other hand, you do have to be making sure those base layers are building up in strength and resilience as we want to build more and more complicated stuff on top. So I'm going to be the first to say I have never ever run a node of any kind, and that's a big gap in my Bitcoin knowledge. I definitely want to do it at some point, try it out, fire up a node and all that sort of stuff. But then I'm pretty sure Jet runs a node, and you told me you've run a node as well in the past. So just give people a bit of an idea, how much work is it in terms of how technical do you need to be, and how much does it cost to actually run a node and be part of the network like that?
I think as long as you're not talking about miners, and I feel like that number of 7,000 is too small, and 900 is too small. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure about the number of miners, but I've run nodes. It's very easy to run. Anybody can go ahead and do it. And yeah, you can use an old laptop or old desktop computer. The real bottleneck isn't the computing power. It's because most machines can handle verifying all the transactions. The issue is internet. Going ahead and downloading all those blocks, that takes forever. And I guess maybe in the definition of a full node, you're keeping all the blocks there, but that's not necessary. You can have a prune node that only keeps a certain blocks after a point that you need it. And so the cost can vary based off of like how much storage you need, how much internet bandwidth you're trying to get, but you can run it on bare bones, kind of like or pretty pretty old system.
Basic consumer hardware type stuff. Yeah,
exactly, a word. And it's not user friendly as far as I know, because I think everything's command line for the most part. So you have to go ahead and download this binary or build it, and I think usually you have to go ahead and get into the command line and run start or whatnot. So it's not user friendly at all. But anybody who's technical and can read the docs should be able to kind of get through with it, unless they have an issue, in which case it might suck. Or if anything gets corrupted in the middle and they have to figure out how to get back to it. But for the most part, it's not too difficult. And so any I think pretty much it's accessible to most technical people or people who are inclined to technical kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I've run like so many instances of BCHD at this point, and I've run. I think one time I tried to spin up a BU node, and another time I had to spin up a BCHN node. The BCHN node I had to set up because it has certain RPC commands that I think are like legacy RPC commands, so BCHD doesn't have them. And that was for a Minecraft mod so that Minecraft players on a server could have cryptocurrency wallets. So in that case, it was just we need a node for the Minecraft server so that it can keep tabs on everyone's funds. BCHD, and yeah, so those ones I ran on like a desktop. I currently run my BCHD server or node on an actual server, but I've in the past run it on a ThinkPad X220 from like 2012 with an external SSD. So I will say with BCHD specifically, I've run into RAM limitations before. I don't think 8 gigs of RAM does it for the initial block download or block sync. But yeah, you need like 300 gigs of storage space and anywhere between like, I would say like 16, well, you can probably do 12 gigs of RAM, but like 12, 16 gigs of RAM, I'm BCHD specific there, and you'll be good. As far as like costs, I never kept track of it because it was just the cost of running a laptop for a month. What's that, like $14 or something like that in electric? So yeah, no, it's pretty straightforward. I have a video from like 5 years ago on my YouTube channel that's how to set up a BCHD node in 5 minutes. I'm pretty sure the first minute of that is me just blabbering. So yeah, anyone can do it in less than 5 minutes. It's not too difficult.
I think I set up a BCHD node as well. I set up BCHD, and I think I know a Bitcoin D at some point, and I guess BCH, maybe ABC at the time, or something like that. But it was BCHD is the one I remember the most. It's the most recent one that I ran, and I was running on 8 gigabytes. It did get corrupted in the middle at one point, but I just restarted it again, and it worked out. But yeah, were you about to say something?
I'm pretty sure with a prune node, you only need like 2 gigs or something like that. Like it's
2 gigabytes.
Yeah,
man. All right, I'm gonna have to just sit down. I've got no excuse. Like my hard drive's not got much space on it, and I've been putting off getting a bigger hard drive or getting a new laptop for a long time. Probably too long. But okay, if it's 2 gigabyte, I'm gonna have to give this a shot. Fire it up and
yeah. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's like a ridiculously like prune BCHD nodes are super small.
Okay, nice. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, at some point. I definitely want to do an episode that just fully goes into the details of all, because there's so many misconceptions. I think who's supposed to run the nodes, who's responsible for it. It kind of ties into all the same stuff about the Flipstarters, like where are the companies that are supposed to run the nodes, that like the podcast, the Bitcoin Cash podcast, ideally should at some stage be running 2 or 3 nodes, like, and that will just be a cost that I'm in sort of investing into to support the network, because if the whole network dies, well, then there's no podcast. So that kind of it should be more businesses, more projects like that are then running infrastructure. And so at the moment, the Satoshis are going on other stuff that the community needs, but eventually, if it was more of a critical need, or once the budget is there, for sure, it's going to be running nodes, and that's just things that people should chip into the ecosystem, really.
So
Jed, did you figure that out?
Sorry, just real quick. I found a prune BCHD node is roughly 10% of a full node, so about 23, 24 gigs right now.
Okay,
that's a lot bigger than when I ran it. But yeah, I guess it was a couple of years ago. But I actually need to run a full node again too, probably, if Flipstarter kind of gets bigger. Just like Jet was saying, he wanted to have a full node because of his Minecraft server. Running a full node is really useful if you're providing a service. You want to go ahead and have something that's reliable, that you can be sure is going to stay up, and you can go ahead and it's decentralized too, so you can always run or try to call somebody else who's running a full node to try to get that information. But for the most part, you want to have yours so it's fast and reliable and close co-located with your your business kind of. And so I'm probably gonna have to do that for Flipstarter.me. One of the biggest issues when you're mentioning about cost is that there's a whole lot of freeloaders out there, and that's what I was mentioning with Chris with the Permissionless Software Foundation, why they went in with IPFS kind of like a stack. It's because there's a lot of people going ahead and pulling. So this information is necessary to kind of run applications. But the people who are running the infrastructure right now might be, getting hammered, and they're not making a lot off of it directly. Maybe, as long as the coin survives, that's a little bit better than, but there's a little benefit there, but I think they do need to get compensated a little bit as well. I'm using Electrum Cash for Flipstarter, and I have a few nodes kind of like connecting to. I think IMU name is running one of them. Quite a few of the general protocols folks, and so I'm on that freeloader state right now, and I want to go ahead and build my own so I can serve so I can meet that need without making it more of a burden for those other guys. And also I want it to be reliable for sure running as well, because when you're relying on a free service, you never know what could happen,
Yeah, and just like we were saying before about funding a centralized foundation, well, as soon as you start doing that, then everybody starts going, why don't they run the infrastructure? And then the infrastructure becomes centralized around there, and it's just a disaster on every angle before you know it. All right,
it's also similar to the IPFS. Sorry, it's also similar to IPFS that I was mentioning in the beginning. Like if you're relying on just IPFS.io servers for hosting your data, not only freeloading, but it's also butt slow. And so if you run your own, it makes it relieves the network a bit, and it makes the user experience much better for everybody. And so it kind of ties in with the whole decentralized, running your own stuff and being responsible for your own stuff helps out every decentralized network for the most part, it seems like, whether it's money, whether it's storage, or if it's accessing blockchain data,
Incentives. Yeah, the incentives are just all lined up. Incentive design. Okay, so let's move on then. This is the last sort of major topic. It's on like 3 slides, but it's kind of just one topic. So we'll just tie it all together, which is that there hasn't been all that much news this week. So instead, the Bitcoin Cash community decided, look, let's just start some drama. I kind of felt like, do I even really want to address this? But I thought it was worth pointing out. So basically, Oscar Salas 93 posted on Reddit saying, main reasons why I'm leaving Bitcoin Cash, a general and final response to my previous post complaining about getting banned. So it kind of followed on from an earlier post that he made where he basically got into some bickering in the Smart BCH Telegram and eventually got banned because I guess everybody was sick of this doom and gloom that was being spread around. And so I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because it's such a classic of Bitcoin Cash. I don't know what it is. I don't know if other crypto communities have this. They definitely do have, like Nick Carter on BTC is a classic one, or there's all kinds of cases of people storming out in quotation marks of coins and claiming it's over and the sky is falling. Of course, it never is. That's the whole point of decentralization. But their own little personal arc with the coin comes to an end, either temporarily or permanently. And these same things get brought up in every single I'm leaving Bitcoin Cash. It's all over, guys. Like, give up now. Woe to ye who remain type of things. Okay, there's too many forks, not enough marketing, retail adoption not growing, prices down. I had an issue with somebody, or Roger didn't do a good enough job, or whatever. And there's usually also I'm being censored, which usually comes right after a whole bunch of complaining that everybody finally got sick of, right? So I just think it's worth looking a little bit at why is there so much drama about this, and does the community need to fix some of these problems? Or, I mean, to me, stuff like this, there's too many forks. Okay, there was a couple of forks. Yeah, that was real traumatic, but it stopped. But people are still bringing it up like, oh, there's so many forks, that's the reason everything's screwed. No, that was like more than 2 years ago, and the community is at high harmony right now. Stop, like, if you're just looking for a reason to be upset, basically, like, not enough marketing. That's another classic. Like, what have you done for marketing? Where's your Bitcoin Cash podcast with 50 episodes, right? How about you do that and then tell me there's not enough marketing, saying someone needs to do the marketing or it needs to be better coordinated. It's decentralized, mate. Like what it just, the word gets out how it gets out. So a lot of this stuff, the price is down. Well, that's the same as every crypto. It's just volatile. It goes up, it goes down. And if you use it as peer-to-peer cash, the volatility is less of a problem. All this stuff, just I don't know why Bitcoin Cash just has so many people who want to make a drama out of nothing. But anyway, that's my thoughts. What do you think? Are these problems that we need to solve, or is this just once somebody's personally fed up or has a change in their life circumstances, they just come up with some excuses to kind of quit the scene?
From my perspective, I think anytime somebody I think it's largely a lot of an emotional response. I think you had in another side is the passion. Is it because we're passionate about the goals? And so when they kind of, I guess, don't meet up to the expectation, maybe people get pissed off that it's not moving fast enough or something like that. So whenever there's emotions involved there, I can see how it comes out in a certain way. And I think that in general, people are just bad. Not people, but in general, we suck at communicating some of these things, and so it can come off as blaming. It can come off as being unconstructive, or it might actually be unconstructive because the other side can't listen to that type of communication style or whatnot. It's so, but I still think that there's something there, and I might not even agree on what the problems are, but I know there's for sure some kind of problem going on with their, how they, maybe their expectation, how they're feeling. Those emotions come from somewhere, whether it's passion or something. So I do like to go ahead and try to parse through what they're saying. And in this case, I think jessquit puts it perfectly succinctly. This is what happens when it's decentralized. And I want to decentralize everything, just like Ted's article about how to go ahead and decentralize everything without but he just did it in the funding model kind of perspective. But when it comes to how we go ahead and work that was actually my original thought. I think that people come out this way or speak this way because there's nobody to go ahead and communicate these issues. Since it is decentralized, they're just going to yell it into the sphere and rage quit at that point because they weren't able to go ahead and communicate it, I guess, and work on it in the process. Maybe that's just a theory of mine. That since it's so decentralized, so they want to go ahead and communicate it, and so they're just going to yell it into the biggest platform that they have. But usually that happens at the last moment when they're super pissed off, and so it ends up becoming rage quitting. And so if there's more communication, maybe working, trying to tackle these hard problems, since it's a decentralized network, these problems are hard to solve if they are actual problems. It is part of the nature of it, but we do want to have reach people with marketing. We do want to I don't know, figure out how to deal with forks or something like that, so that it's not as damaging when it happens. People can go their own way somehow, so that hopefully it's not gonna end up hurting both sides or something like that dramatically. And so I think there's something there. We just it's hard problems to solve, and so it does take a lot of communication back and forth and something like that. And it would be difficult. And so that's why I think that combined with how difficult it is, combined with how decentralized it is, it ends up becoming rage quitting more often than not.
Yeah, I'm not trying to call out this guy specifically. I want to be clear about that. I don't really agree with him all that much, but I just think it just happens it's like clockwork. Every 2 or 3 months somebody's having a bad day and they make a post like this. So jessquit is my community comment of the week for just pointing this out in the comments, basically saying he says, okay, quote, development is centralized, also there are too many forks, also the marketing isn't cohesive. That's what you get when something is actually decentralized. Smart BCH isn't BCH, but I'm leaving BCH because the smart BCH guys didn't appreciate me telling them their project was a corpse and they were wasting their time. Also, price isn't important to me, but I'm leaving because the market is bad. Also, Roger Ver, bad man, reads like Tobias's post, end quote. So it's just kind of, when people get frustrated and when they leave, it usually just devolves into a contradictory set of mess that essentially just comes down to I'm unhappy, or things aren't working out the way I want, or I see a problem and I don't see somebody making a successful solution. Oftentimes there is, like, this smart BCH one is a classic. Okay, it's pretty screwed up and there's problems, but there's also not nobody doing anything. Okay, the person rage quitting maybe can't see that, but people involved are trying to make a solution. Whether it's a success or not is a different question. But if they can do a better job, that's the whole point. It's decentralized. I just don't think people could have the best sense of, people are not used to decentralized, leaderless things. Like, who goes and says, my internet speeds need to be faster and so I'm quitting the internet. It's like, that's not, the internet doesn't care, bro. It's the same thing. Everybody seems to get upset about Bitcoin Cash because in their little slice of the world, they're like, it's not going, the Telegram groups that I'm in are not being constructive. This whole community is so screwed. And there was points in this post about the leaders are not doing the right thing. It's like, you're not getting it, man. There is no leaders. The people who you think are influential maybe are not acting a certain way that you like or whatever. But the answers are pretty obvious. Stop listening to those people, start listening to somebody else, or do a better job yourself and prove those people wrong. Like, lead by example. Just being salty and quitting is not really making a difference. I don't know. Jet, what do you think about all this?
So I'm going to do something that I never do, not just on the podcast, but even my day-to-day life, and be a little empathetic here.
Okay, be the good guy. I've been the bad guy in this situation.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be a good guy, but this is kind of my message to the community too. Like, the cryptocurrency scene is exhausting. Learn to take breaks. You should be able to walk away. It's just money, bro. You should be able to walk away for years, come back, collect your paycheck, and still use it. We don't need to hang out 24/7. We don't need to be talking back and forth all the time. Like, unless you're contributing to a project. If you're just an end user, you none of this should worry you at all. Does it work as money? Yes or no? That's it.
Yeah, good point. And I think that's even to the extent that you do contribute to projects or be involved to the extent that you need to be. You don't need to be browsing Reddit 15 times a day or arguing with people in the Telegram chat to work on your thing, or chat to somebody at your local crypto meetup about Bitcoin Cash or whatever. The reality is that what seems like such a big drama to the 5 people in a Reddit thread is that 99.99999% of humanity aren't involved. They aren't discussing that. They don't care. And they are never going to care. In 24 hours, there'll be a new post on Reddit and nobody will literally ever care again. So it's just so, I don't know. It's just, you can see I think it's good that there's so much passion in the scene that when people leave, they kind of, it's like, what are you contributing at that point though? Just, they kind of say, often put it this sort of altruistic way, I'm trying to help the Bitcoin Cash community see its flaws or something. But it's this same avatar, this same idea that there's somebody that should be responsible or that is going to hear them and like change everything for that. No, okay, people might take that feedback on board. Like, we're discussing it right now. Maybe those ideas percolate into the sort of consciousness. But these same things that have been brought up over and over and over again, like why there's too many forks and the price is bad. Look, if anybody had a magic solution, they would have already deployed it. And the fact is, it's just not really that big of an issue. Anyway, somebody made a response post, which was really good to see. Short Squeeze 20K. Shout out to them, which was main reasons why I'm not leaving Bitcoin Cash. And they just pointed out a bunch of stuff that is going great, which these posts always ignore. So they said developer happiness was the very first point, and I thought that was brilliant. That's exactly right, because all the complaints about forks is already just swept aside once you realize that all the devs are happy. The forks usually start socially and then they come into a technical thing. Well, there's no social mistrust or whatever, so the devs are not under that technical pressure. That's brilliant. Then they talked about layer 1 improving, again technical, but okay, the difficulty algorithm, cache address, repay protection, all these things that we implemented shortly after in the history of BCH were basically like maintenance. We're basically putting it onto its own path. And now it's things like scaling, double spend proofs, native introspection, cash tokens. We're actually building the future rather than just fixing up problems from the past, which is just so bullish. It's unbelievable. It's still a UTXO. The community's still doing P2P cash. We're still getting favorable oversight from regulators, like we saw last week with the Canadian stuff. Legal tender in St. Mon, the conference coming up, that's going to be massive. I don't know how you can hear about that coming up and think, oh, Bitcoin Cash is dead, it's all over. The maxis like narrative is moving against the BTC people more and more, and then they had a bunch of other points which were kind of secondary, but you can sort of throw them in there. Any hedge is being developed. Roger Ver's still all in, all on BCH and contributing to the community and pushing it. Smart BCH could always have a turnaround. Okay, that remains to be seen, but it's not actually completely dead. Coins are coming out from Mt. Gox. Maybe there'll be some of the OGs. They'll buy up some BCH. Some of that stuff's a bit hopium at the end there, right? But the idea is, if you look for the negatives, you'll see the negatives. And if you look for the positives, you'll see that's why I had podcast has had 50,000 views on YouTube. All right. Where's that in the post? Like 2 years ago, there was no podcast. Now there is, right? I'm not saying that it's the most centrally important thing. The point is that I am looking for a positive trend and I'm finding one, and they're doing the opposite. They're looking for a reason to be upset, and they are. So anyway, that's about all I wanted to say on this, but I'm optimistic, and I don't know. Are you optimistic? How are we doing? Are we trending in the right direction?
Absolutely. I mean, the conference is a big plus. I don't know why you'd quit right before it. I mean, after it's announced. I mean, especially when you're close by, possibly. But layer one improvements is a big plus to the whole ecosystem. I guess since I'm a developer, I kind of focus on that. And yeah, I think that can actually address some of the problems that he was mentioning. When it comes to cash tokens, that's probably a decent way to kind of onboard people who don't want to go all in on crypto, any hedge, and BCH pool for people who don't have that have a problem with the volatility,
price,
actually make a profit off of the volatility a bit, right? And so that's a huge plus. What was his other about forks?
Forks, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that there's any solution technically from here.
We also haven't had a fork in so long. Like,
I
mean, not so
right.
long, but as far as crypto goes, like, we've been doing good on forks.
Yeah, true. Actually, that was probably one of the weaker points, but I guess it was his overall thing. But anyways, yeah, I think things are looking good for the next few years. God bless.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Anyway, we had to dig a bit into the drama. We don't always get it on this show, so we'll put a little bit in the mix there. Right, last section then, message to the community. So kind of tie it all together a little bit in terms of all the Flipstarter stuff, the outlook for the future, or I don't know, whatever else on your mind. What does the Bitcoin Cash community need to hear?
I guess I could mix it up, kind of tie it all together. So I think my message to the community would be to kind of like to handle communication a little bit better. I think you're really correct where people don't understand how to act, I guess, a little bit. No, I'm not trying to point any fingers or anything like that, but it's a decentralized kind of a community, and the whole goal is to kind of like decentralize the entire world, at least for me, but most people aren't used to that. We were not raised in the decentralized with the decentralized mindset because of all the stuff going on with in my opinion, governments, and we kind of get raised in this kind of like central authority figure kind of telling us what to do for decades, and so people want to yell at somebody, tell their complaints, but that's not how it works. Not in this decentralized world. They'll fall on deaf ears. And so Flipstarters and community, so working on a communication and presenting solutions, identifying problems, and kind of like even working together to kind of figure out what the possible solutions could be. People can kind of be an ad, no matter what, whatever your feelings are, you can still be an ad to the community. Your perspective will be valued, especially when you're going ahead and trying to solve problems or link up with people who see certain issues and try to work on top of that. It can be a benefit to everybody. And Flipstarter is just one way to kind of like do that, so that we can kind of get a little bit of funds. But the funding is just one part of it. Collaboration, putting putting out a thought out proposal, those are just as important. You probably won't get the funding if you don't get that part down. And so overall, just that's basically my message to the community is kind of like work on communication so that we can collaborate a little bit more or have tighter kind of collaboration for real. And hopefully we can see each other at the Bitcoin Cash conference.
Yeah, you're gonna be there?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, hopefully you are. I think everybody should just remember, like, I don't know, it's one of my favorite sayings. It's not a problem unless you've got a solution, right? If you've got a complaint, a problem, or whatever, you've got two options. One, start fixing it. Show us how it's done. It's that simple. Like, if there's a problem, get on and do it. Otherwise, that's going to get a far more positive response. Guys, I've identified this problem, and probably everyone will be like, yes, that is a problem. And B, here's my solution. And then people can give you feedback on that. It's actually proactive and positive. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're not happy or you're not, just take a break. Like Jet said, like, just go on an island vacation, maybe to St. Kitts or anywhere else. Just disconnect from all of it, and you don't need to make some big rage post about it. Like, it's better if you just fade out, go away for a little while, and then you can come back. It'll still be here. That's the whole point. So it really doesn't need to be such a big drama, I don't think. Anyway, that's enough of that for this week. That will pretty much do it for the show. As always, we got the donations, QR code. Thank you very much to all the donators. All this we're talking about funding of devs and Flipstarters and all that sort of stuff. It's really, really appreciated. Honestly, every Satoshi is just a motivation boost as well as a sort of financial boost, I guess. Tudik P, shout out to you in the chat. Shout out to everybody in the chat, actually. It's been great to have you. Kind of a unusual time zone for the show, so always good to have people checking in. Everybody listening can check out Start Guide, FAQ, links, Bitcoin Cash Podcast .com. Somebody said in the survey that they wanted the show to be on Odyssey. Well, it already is on Odyssey, so go check it out. There you can stream the show on Podcash as well. Shout out to Ricky, my patron, and other shout outs to the show. Sahid, where can people find you? And obviously give the Flipstarter one more plug.
Yeah, my Flipstarter is fund.flipstarter.me, and I'm not really on social media too much. You can find me though on Telegram for the most part at Bitcoin Cash channel, Sahid Miller. But yeah, check me out on flipstarter.me, and my GitHub is linked somewhere in there, but Sahid Miller as well. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to you guys for sponsoring or for sending in a pledge, and to all the folks who already contributed. We're about 1.5 away from the goal. Thank you guys.
Doing great work, mate. Absolutely great work. Chet, did you remember what you were going to say? Or?
I did. I wrote it down because I almost lost it like immediately after I thought of it. So if you're exhausted, like, I think both the leaving the space and the making the post are one and the same. If you're looking for just a community aspect, if you're looking for that social support or external validation, just be upfront and honest with it. So if you're tired with Bitcoin Cash in the space, be like, hey guys, look, this is getting fucking draining on my soul. What can we do about this? Is it just me or what? And if you do want to leave, just be like we don't need... Yeah, I think a lot of it was social validation issues. I think if we focus on being a little more open in our communication and with ourselves, like, I don't know if I'm being a little too arrogant in this, but I think we're all a little too autistic. So we just need to calm down, be a little more, just emotionally aware, I think. Yeah,
dude, that's a great point. I mean, I don't know if it was in that post at all, but I'm not sure if he actually mentioned his values, what he cares about. I don't know if it like particularly mentioned that. I think that's an important part to kind of like connect with others, kind of explain what you're so passionate about and what's in the way of that at this moment, and then people can connect much easier than just mentioning things that are problems to you, but not other people might not understand that context of those problems for you. If your goal is
Exactly.
to have peer-to-peer cash everywhere, there's absolutely issues to getting there, that we need to fix. And so, I mean, if that's your goal. And so I think, being open, that was a great point, Jeff. For real.
It's a community. That's exactly what it is. And yeah, for whoever that was making the frustrated post, yeah, if you need some more community support, yeah, just ask for it. And maybe when it comes out as this is a problem and this is a problem and this is a problem, I'm leaving. Like, that's not a good way to get sympathy or support or connection in any scenario, let alone anonymously in the hostile cryptocurrency environments, right? So yeah, if you need, if the community is feeling a bit unfriendly, well, that's definitely a separate problem, and we can tackle that. But yeah, conflating it with all this other drama is just not going to get the desired result, and that's pretty much what we saw. And things need to be uncensorable as well too. So complaining I've been censored, well, your message got out there, you found a way. So clearly, when you want to get it done, you can get it done. Don't give me this I'm being censored victim like mentality. Like, BCH, just the history proves it. Like, you got to be able to. People are going to attack you. They're going to try and shut you down. They're going to try and silence you. You got to find a way to get the message out there. That's our responsibility. That's our burden to changing the world. It's not up to the world to just give us a free ride. Like, that's not how it works. All right, cool. Well, that will do it for the show. Again, shout out to everyone in the chat. I just made a Flipstarter. It's popping off. Thanks everyone for listening, and until next time.
Appreciate it, guys.
The greatest story the world has ever known. The rise and rise of Bitcoin. 2000.